Hello, and welcome to episode 75 of 10,000 Stitches podcast, a weekly chit chat all about the joys of small scale knitting. My name is Andy, and sorry about missing last week. I wasn't planning on missing last week's episode. I was planning on having something to post, but last weekend I was in the process of moving Wesley up to New Hampshire, and time just got away from me, and nothing got recorded. So, but we're back this week. So I think it's going to be a pretty normal episode this week. We'll talk about finished objects, works in progress, what's coming up next, knit along stuff, new toys that I have. Just the normal kind of stuff. So let's get into it. If you're looking for links to anything that I mention, if you're watching this video on the embedded video on the Ravelry thread or the blog post, everything will be linked right below the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, in the description box below the video, there will be a link to the blog post, and you can go there and then find everything right below the video. I don't know if I'm just all screwed up today. Like I said, my name is Andy. I think I said that. My name is Andy. Hi. It's been a minute since I recorded. And if you wanted to find me on the interwebs, the only social media I'm using right now is Ravelry. You can find me on there as Purlbug, Purlbug. You can find my blog at thepurlbug.com. And then we have the 10,000 Stitches podcast group on Ravelry. Okay, I think that was everything, though not quite in the normal order. So yeah, let's jump into some knitting stuff, right? That stuff makes sense. So first, finished objects. I have one finished object to show you guys, and that is my vanilla socks that I was making using Perfect. And you might notice this sock is on a sock blocker. I got sock blockers. I know I kept saying like I would never ever block socks, and to be fair, I did not buy these for blocking socks. I bought these purely to be able to show off socks better on the podcast and be able to take better pictures of socks. So, But because I know I'll forget to mention this later, I got these from a yarn shop here in Richmond. It's actually a new one to me. It's called Dances with Wool. And I went there, I think, on the Wednesday before we left to take Wesley up to New Hampshire because I needed a couple of new needles because I was in a pinch. And they had these sock blockers because I really wanted the sort of like metal ones like these. So they had them, so I bought them. Highly recommend if you are in the Richmond area. It was a great yarn store. Had a lot of sock yarn, not just fingering weight yarn, but sock yarn. So I was in kind of a hurry, and it was like right about that closing time when I went there last. But hopefully the next time I make it there, I can film a little bit inside. But yeah, really great. Highly recommend. And I picked up some sock blockers. So this is one of them. The other one is way off camera, but yeah, so these are the pair. These were made using Arnie and Carlos, the Regia Perfect in one of the Arnie and Carlos colorways. Otherwise pretty normal sock for me, 68 stitch sock, knit on US size ones, which are 2.25 millimeter needles, and a Fish Lips Kiss heel. Boom, love them, excited to wear them. I haven't worn them yet because, for one thing, it has only recently started getting cool here for fall, and for another thing, I didn't want to wear them and then not have them washed to show off. So now I can wear them and wash them. That's that. Speaking of wearing and washing, I thought I would show you guys a little bit of darning I did on an old pair of socks. So, except they're not really that old, but if you guys remember, I knit those, I had that cherry blossom yarn that I dyed up, which I knit into the Flying North socks, which was a short pair of socks. And I knit them maybe in like April or something back in the spring. And when I wore them last, I was taking them off to put them in the laundry, and I discovered a hole in the bottom of one of them. So go figure. But I put them aside to darn them, and I just finally got around to doing that today. So I thought I would show you guys that. I know that I always said I would never darn socks, and of course, I feel like the fastest way to make sure you're going to do something is to say you will never do it, because this is the second pair of socks that I've darned, but I just like them too much to, let them go. And I didn't make them that long ago, so I must have snagged it on something, I guess. But this is a little patch that I put on it. Obviously, I used a contrasting yarn just because you know, it's on the bottom of the sock, and I don't know. I mean, hand knit socks, I feel like you should wear your patches with pride. So, yeah, that's that. Sorry they're dirty otherwise, because like I said, I noticed the hole as I was putting them into the laundry, so they haven't been washed yet. But yeah, that's that. Maybe the next time I go to darn a pair of socks, I will record a little video of kind of how I do it, because I know there's lots of different methods out there, and I'm sure my method isn't the best one, but it's one that works for me, so I'll keep doing it. But yeah, it's just sort of like a little woven patch that I put on there. And there we go, there's the focus. So yeah, that's that. Boom. All right, let's talk about works in progress. So I have a couple of things in progress right now, and I'm trying to sort of finish some of them because I don't like having too many things in progress. But I will mention right away, the Tempest cardigan has had no work done on it. Yeah. So let's see, the one that's probably closest to completion is my Vivid cowl. This is a cowl that I was making based on the Treppen Virdal cowl and using a little cable motif from the Vivid mitts. So this is what that looks like. It's being made with this really dark red yarn that I dyed up forever ago. It's a 75-25 BFL nylon blend. And it's being knit on US 2.5s, which are a 3mm needle. And yeah, it's coming along. So here you can see that cable detail on the front. And then the rest is pretty much just 2x2 ribbing. And I think I maybe like a centimeter or so from binding off. So I've really been trying to get this done. I was working on it at work, but I just haven't had a lot of time in general at work to be knitting lately. So I brought it home and I figured I'm so close to finishing, I just want to try and get it done. So I might try and just bust it out tonight and get it finished tonight so that it's done. Because I don't know, when I have too many works in progress, I just start to get like anxious about them. And so I'm trying to, you know, get some things wrapped up. So that's one. And yeah, that's that. I'm very excited to have it done. This one is probably going to become a gift for someone because it's, you know, just a pretty nice neutral basic color, nothing too crazy, but I don't know who yet. It's just, you know, probably going to become a Christmas gift for someone. So that's work in progress number 1. Work in progress number 2 is another one that you guys have already seen. These are my Villavini socks. And this is actually on the other one of this pair of sock blockers. This is the one that's finished. I just wanted to give you guys a better look of what it looked like because I know I didn't do a great job last week. But yeah, these are a sock pattern that uses this, uses Intarsia to put this lace panel in a contrasting color. Main color here is Regia 4-ply in the Ski Mask colorway. And then this contrasting color is one of my hand-dyed yarns that I just stuck in there. So yeah, this is the finished one, and then I think when I showed them to you guys last, I had the other one just barely started, like not even done with the cuff. And so now I'm slightly further. I haven't touched these in a little while because I've just been really busy and too busy to sit down and work on color work. But yeah, this is what the other one looks like. So I've gotten a couple repeats of that lace pattern done, and as you can see, I used a different color, like I said I was going to, on the lace panel. I don't know, I think it works. I think both of these look good with this main color, and I think I don't know, I think it's fun. I think they're close enough, but different enough to make it, you know, kind of fun and different. But yeah, that's that. These are going to be for my mom. I made them the size to fit my mom. So yeah, don't tell her. Shh. Even though I think she watches these, but she'll probably forget by the time she gets them. But anyway, yeah, so that's that. Speaking of knitting things for my mom, so when I went and bought these sock blockers, it was really interesting trying to figure out what size I needed to buy because, you know, they come in like small, medium, and large, and to fit my foot, I think I actually would need to get a large because I have giant feet. But knowing that I also make a lot of socks for my mom and for some other friends of mine who have feet that are slightly smaller than mine, I did wind up going with a medium, and my mom's sock is just kind of just right at the end, and she wears a size 8.5. So yeah, so I don't know if you guys noticed, but on mine, which are way over there, so I can't grab it anymore, but on mine, it's definitely loose at the toe, which is why I say, you know, it's not meant for blocking, it's just meant for showing off in a flatter format. But yeah, that's work in progress number 2. And then work in progress number 3 is a new pair of socks that you guys haven't seen yet. These were my travel knitting while we moved Wesley up to New Hampshire. And these are a pattern that has been in my queue forever. This is Effervesce, and I forget who the pattern is by, and I should know this. But anyway, the pattern is Effervesce, and it's this just really beautifully detailed pattern that is not actually that hard when you get into like doing it, but it just looks really good. And so I'm knitting these with a skein of my yarn. This is the 100% BFL base. It dyed up in the That Pumpkin Drink colorway, so this is what that looks like. And yeah, this is what the sock looks like. So it's this really nice sort of like basic cable pattern that is supposed to look like bubbles sort of going up from the toe up to the top of the leg. So this is the cuff and this is towards the toe. So yeah, and the nice thing about it is because it's knit top down, you know, you're doing most of the cabling up at the top, and then it sort of gets easier and easier as you go along. And I'm almost to the point where I'm done doing any of the cables, and it'll just be sort of this 2x1 twisted rib until the toe. But yeah, I'm really, really pleased with it. I've been calling these my fizzy pumpkin drink socks, which is kind of gross when you actually sit and think about it. Sounds like a Harry Potter drink. But yeah, as you can see, I am past the gusset, so at this point I'm just finishing up the foot chart, and then it'll just be, you know, straight away until the end. So yeah, I'm super excited to have these. These are probably going to be like my fall socks for this year, but yeah, really, really loving this pattern. Highly recommend. It's a free pattern, and it's definitely looks more complicated than it is, and I love that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's my works. Oh, and these are being knit. I'm knitting the 72 stitch size on a US size 1, which is a 2.25 millimeter needle. Yeah. I think I forgot to mention it. The Villavinis, I am knitting it, I think it's a 66 stitch size, and those are also being knit on a US size 1, which is 2.25 millimeter needle. So yeah, that is that for my works in progress. On to what's coming up next. Yeah, so a lot of this stuff I've mentioned before, but I'll just rehash what's coming up next. So I've mentioned that I wanted to make those Undine socks, which is sort of this like mermaid theme sock pattern. And I showed these off, but these are the yarns that I think I'm going to use for them. One is this sort of, you know, bluey, greeny, yellow yarn that I dyed up when I was doing my how to dye yarn in the Crackpot tutorial. And then the other is this really sort of deep, solid blue purple that I think will work really well for a pair of, you know, mermaidy sort of themed socks. So that's one thing that I want to do. I'll probably wait to start these until I finish up the Villavini, because I really don't want to have 2 color work-ish socks going on at once, and I really want to get the Villavini finished up. So these will probably get started, maybe not even by the next time I record. But yeah, that's that. And then I also mentioned that I wanted to make sort of a mini mosaic blanket. The mosaic blanket pattern is a pattern from Pearl Soho, and it was all the rage on Ravelry for a little bit, and I sort of fell in love with it, and I even swatched it. I think I showed you guys this last time, but this was my tiny swatch that I did. So yeah, this was done using fingering weight yarn. I think the pattern is written for like worsted weight yarn, but like I said, I want to make this into sort of like a placemat sized thing to fit on top of a nightstand that I have over there, just to keep things, you know, kind of in place. So this, you know, sort of the gauge that this is at is great for that. It would not be good for an entire blanket, but, you know, for just a smaller piece, this will work fine. So I had mentioned that I wasn't sure what yarn I was going to use for this. I knew that I was going to use this black because I've had the black in my stash for quite a while, and I just don't plan on knitting a pair of all black socks, so I figured this is a good pattern to use it up with. But I didn't necessarily want to do just plain white, plus, like, I don't know, I just didn't want to do plain white. So I finally figured out the other yarn that I'm going to use. Sorry, everything's over on the bed and it's just like slightly getting out of reach now. But anyway, this is the other yarn that I'm going to use. This is a skein of 80/20 Superwash Merino nylon that I dyed up like forever ago, trying out a new technique. and I just haven't used it yet, and I think that this will work really well. I think it'll still have really good contrast with the black because it's mostly still, you know, white, but it does have some little pops of color that I think will, you know, produce an interesting pattern. So that, again, is going to be something that I will get to, I don't know when, but I'm very excited to get to it whenever I do get to it. And then the other thing that I want to try and do while we're still, you know, doing these sort of colorwork themed patterns is, I think the pattern is called Brioche Toe Up Socks, which is a pattern that was very generously gifted to me by a viewer, so thank you very much. But it's a pattern that I've had my eye on for a while because, I've had my eye on because, you know, it's socks, but it's brioche, and I haven't really done a lot of brioche. I think I made one brioche scarf like forever ago, to the point where I don't even remember how to do brioche. And so the idea of doing brioche on a pair of socks sounds really interesting to me, and I'm really excited to try it. And so that is something that I'm looking forward to trying. And I have so many other things like sort of on the list that I haven't even picked out yarn for it, but I'm super excited to give it a shot whenever it is that I get around to it. Plus, I have a pair of socks that I want to make for a friend of mine, so it's like, yeah, I just have too many things that I want to do and not enough time to do them. But we'll talk about that later in the chit-chat stuff. But anyway, I think that's that for the coming up stuff. Like, I just have a whole lot of things that I want to do and not enough time to do them. But yeah, let's talk. I'm gonna skip dyeing because like I have been doing some dyeing, but it's all like very wet still, so I don't want to like go grab it and bring it over because it's not even close to the true color. So we'll skip dyeing. Let's talk about another new toy that I have. So, sort of similar to these sock blockers, right? This is another thing that I sort of had really resisted buying for a long time, and I'm glad that I did in this case because I found something that was better than sort of the normal thing, and that is a yarn swift, right? So if you didn't know this, I didn't have a yarn swift for the longest time. So I would wind up all of my balls of yarn by hand and just put them over the back of a couple chairs, and it was fine. And to be fair, that method was totally fine, and it's still fine, right? But I decided I wanted something just a little bit easier. I still don't have a ball winder, but I did sort of want a yarn swift because I just wanted something to kind of hold the yarn and keep it from getting all tangled up. And so I was looking into different sort of styles of yarn swift, and the problem with like an umbrella swift is that, of course, it takes up a lot of space and you have to like clamp it to a table or something. Plus, they kind of have the same problem that umbrellas do, which is that eventually they just stop working very well. And, you know, I feel like they sort of kind of like move in and out sort of as you're going along. And I just didn't like the idea of an umbrella style swift. So thankfully, I came across a different style of swift, which is an Amish style swift. And so the way that these work, let me grab the pieces. And maybe I will insert a picture here of sort of what it looks like put together, because of course mine is taken apart. But basically it breaks down into 4 pieces and then a couple of pegs. And so 2 of the pieces are your base pieces, right? So these are what sits on the table. It's meant to be used on a tabletop. And so these just slot into one another like that, and it forms a surprisingly stable base, right? You would think that it's not going to work very well, but it totally does, right? So these are your base, and then your arms are these big, huge, long pieces, and again, they just slot together like that into a big X, and you can see there's a little hole in there, and there's also a hole in here, and there's a long peg that it comes with that goes through both of those sets of holes and holds these together, and that's also the peg that it rotates on. And then you can see on here that there's all these holes in the arms, and so you have another set of pegs that go into the holes, and you kind of pick the set of holes that corresponds to how big your hank of yarn is, and it even has little measurements printed out for like how for the circumference of your hank. Although I just kind of stick the pegs in until I figure out where it goes. But, right, so you put your pegs in each of the 4 arms, and then you drop your hank over it, and then you just start winding, just like you would with an umbrella swift. And it works really well. Like, you wouldn't think, given that there's like no ball bearings or anything in it, that it would rotate very well on just like a wooden spindle, but it does. Like, it gets rotating pretty fast. At least for me, you know, winding up my yarn by hand. Plus, like, the nice thing is that it breaks down super small. I would probably say maybe even smaller than an Umbrella Swift. Plus, like, by themselves, these pieces are pretty much indestructible, right? Like, I don't have to be delicate with it when I'm moving it around for storage because they're just pieces of wood. The only thing I have to worry about is the little wooden dowels, which I have in a little baggie. But I feel like even if I broke these, I could probably go to the hardware store and find a replacement, right? Like, it's just wooden dowels. I just need to find a new wooden dowel in the right diameter. So, highly recommend. The one that I have is by Stanwood Needle Crafts, and I will link to them. I'll link to their website, but I got mine off of Amazon for a pretty good price and good shipping, so you can get them off of Amazon. I think you can get them through people on Etsy. I think Stanwood actually sells through Etsy as well. I think ChiaoGoo also makes a version of this. So, like, you know, if you search Amish style Swift, right, there's plenty of them out there. But this one was a really good starter one. It was a price that was agreeable to me. And so I was like, heck yeah. And I'm really glad that I waited and found like the right thing before I bought it. So yeah, that's that. And then let's talk knit along, right? So we are just about halfway through our knit along because it's October now. Super exciting. So we're about halfway through the knit along. The theme, the technique theme is color work, and the color theme is orange. So remember, color work can be stranded color work, it can be mosaic knitting, it can be 2-color brioche, it can be as simple as just manual stripes, it can be intarsia, right? There's plenty of options here. So yeah, if you want to see the rules or anything for that, of course, I always link to the chatter thread, which has the rules on the first post. So you can go check that out. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask. But yeah, we've been getting lots of finished objects, both for the color and for the technique. So that's super exciting. And as a reminder, the prize for that is going to be a skein of my sort of holiday Christmassy colorway for this year, which is this chocolate peppermint bark. I'm not going to say it wrong this time, but it's this peppermint bark yarn, which has, you know, some reds and some natural cream, and then the brown for the chocolate. And this is inspired by those lint little squares that come out around Christmas time. I totally love them. They're my favorite. But yeah, so the prize will be a skein of this, and it will be on that Stellina base that I think I talked about last time I recorded. It's actually part of what's drying over there from my dyeing adventures this weekend. I did the first half of this because it's a 2-step process. So I did the red first, and that's all drying, and then I will get the brown done. So hopefully I will have the actual skein to show you guys next week. But yeah, that's what it looks like. So that's, let's see, that's knit along stuff. So, question of the week. My question of the week this week is a totally selfish question. So the question is, should I make an exploration station? If you don't know, the Exploration Station is a big, dramatic shawl designed by Stephen West, and it's just magnificent. I'll try and put in a picture here so you can get an idea of what it looks like if you haven't seen one, but I've never knit a Stephen West pattern, so that's one thing, but I'm totally in love with them, right? I'm totally smitten with most of his patterns because they're just really out there and really fun. And, you know, when I look through like the project pages for the Exploration Station, like a lot of them are just so beautiful. But my question is, right, so if you've knit it, right, do you wear it? Because I already don't wear shawls all that much, but I would like to start wearing them a little bit more. And just like, if you've knit it, did you feel like it was worth it? Or maybe it'll be worth it just because it'll be a fun knit, and maybe that's good enough. Like, I need some help here. Normally I'm really good at picking out patterns to knit, but this one I'm just not sure about. If I do knit it, the color scheme I'm thinking is, I've mentioned this before, but I have a whole bunch of this Cascade Heritage silk, and I say a whole bunch. I have 3 skeins of it because I bought it thinking I was going to make a sweater out of it, and then I just don't think that's going to happen, and I want to get it used up, right? So this is an 85-15 Superwash Merino silk blend, so like, I've heard silk is not the best for knitting into socks, so I don't want to make this into socks. And it's also this tan color, which is sort of pretty close to my skin tone, so like, I don't really want to leave it the color that it is. So I was thinking, right, like I said, I have 3 skeins of it. I was thinking I would leave one skein the color that it is, and then The exploration station the pattern is written for 4 colors. I've seen people do it in only 2 colors, but I was thinking I would go ahead and do 4. But it's written for 4 colors. So I was thinking I would leave one of the skeins as is, and then I was thinking I would overdye the other 2. And what I was thinking I would do is, let's see if I have stuff easy to grab. Oh gosh, everything's falling. What I was thinking is I would take these 2 colorways, right? So this is my pumpkin sort of spice colorway, and this is a turquoise colorway that I just dyed up recently. I think I showed this off in my last episode. So I was thinking I would take these and use these recipes to overdye this. So of course it's not going to look exactly like this, but it'll be pretty close because this is a pretty light color anyway. So basically the color theme that I will have going is this, because I was thinking that then the 4th color I would just do a natural, kind of white yarn. So this would be sort of my color palette, would be sort of an orange, a turquoise, this tan by itself, and then a white. Your thoughts, right? Should I do something more dramatic? I want it to be sort of understated. So that's why I was thinking that this color palette would work really well. Let me know your thoughts. Again, let me know your thoughts on just the exploration station as a whole, and whether or not it's a worthwhile pattern to knit, because I feel like it's one of those things that I will probably keep thinking about it until I knit it, or until someone gives me a really, really good reason not to knit it. So yeah, that's my question. Should I knit an exploration station? If you've made one, do you wear it? How do you wear it? Tell me about it. But yeah, that's going to be it, I think, for the knitting sort of stuff. So if that's all you were here for, thanks very much for hanging out. Otherwise, I'm going to talk a little bit about the whole process of moving Wesley up to New Hampshire and what it's sort of been like now here without him. So yeah, that'll be, I guess, what I talk about in Chit Chat. Gosh, I inhaled to start talking and then I choked on my own spit. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about, sort of this process. So like I've said before, Wesley got a job up in New Hampshire, which he actually starts tomorrow. So for you guys, it will be yesterday if you're watching this the day that this goes live. But he got a job up in New Hampshire. So this past weekend, we moved him up there, and we left on Saturday, right? So we left Saturday, and the bummer about driving up to New Hampshire from here is, one thing, it's really long, right? It's like 10 hours. And we didn't want to make that trip in one day, so we knew we were going to split it up into 2 days. The real bummer is that you have to go through basically every major city on the East Coast to get to New Hampshire, right? So, we left Richmond, then the first city, of course, we hit is DC, which we went around and it was pretty fine, right? We hit a little bit of traffic, but it was no big deal. So you hit DC, then you hit Baltimore in Maryland, and that's where we stopped for lunch. We got just sort of through Baltimore and then stopped at a mall sort of on the outskirts of Baltimore. And I picked this mall because I, was looking at the map trying to pick somewhere for us to go for lunch. And I saw this mall and I was like, well, great. A mall offers us lots of options, right? Like, this will be good. And it looked like it was right by the freeway, but of course it was not, right? So it took us forever to actually get there. And it was like right next to the freeway, but you couldn't get there, so like you had to go all the way around, and kind of a pain. And it was like a really weird mall too. Like we, we're kind of walking around in it, and like there was no bathrooms anywhere. Like, of course, we've been in the car for, I don't know, 2-3 hours at that point, right? So it's kind of time, we're like, where's the bathroom? Where can we eat? And like, the only bathrooms we found were in the food court. And like, otherwise, like, we couldn't, and we didn't find those at first, right? So we were looking for a bathroom, and I went into a store and I just asked the employees in the store, I'm like, hey, where's the nearest bathroom? And they're like, oh, probably in like that department store back there. And it was like, you mean there's not, right? I don't know. It was a weird mall. Anyway, so we had lunch there, and that was fine. And then we got back on the road, and then I'm trying to think of what order you hit things in, because my knowledge of East Coast geography is not great, which is evidenced by the fact that I didn't realize New Hampshire was so far away until we actually started looking at it on a map, and then we're like, wow, that's really far away. I think Philadelphia is what comes next, and we managed to bypass Philadelphia. We didn't go near Philadelphia, so that was good. And then, of course, you hit New York City, right? So New York City, there is no going around New York City, really. And so we basically had to go right through New York City. We were taking, I think at that point we were on 95 North or 91, 90 something. Right, so we're on the interstate and we're just like, okay, fine. We're just going to plow through. We'll just stay in our lane. This will be fine. Which for the most part it was, right? It was a little bit nerve-wracking just because like there's a lot of cars and people don't really know how to drive or like are driving really crazy, and so but we made it. Like the really crazy thing was that of course we had our GPS up guiding us, and at one point, right, so we had to cross the George Washington Bridge, which was a crazy expensive toll, go figure, right? So you come in and there's like 8 or 10 lanes to go through the toll booths, and of course we had an easy pass, so it was really easy. We didn't have to stop. We just kind of drove through. So you have like 8 or 10 lanes that have to condense into like 4 lanes to go across the bridge. So right there, it's really confusing because you have just people trying to merge, and of course no one wants to let you in. And so we finally get into a lane, and of course we're in the far left lane for the bridge, and then all of a sudden our GPS decides like, oh, it's found a route that's like a minute faster. And so then it's saying, okay, well, now you need to exit. As soon as you get off the bridge, you need to exit on the right. And we're like looking at the bridge and the traffic, and we're like, there's no way we're getting to that right hand. Like, there's no way we're moving across 4 lanes of traffic on this bridge to exit. And like, it was going to like take us on a road for a little while and then put us back on the interstate again. So I was like, you know what? We're just going to stay here. We'll just keep going. Wherever we wind up, it'll be fine, right? And of course it was. So it was one of those weird instances where sometimes it's like, no, GPS. I know where I want to go. You don't know where I want to go. So we got past New York City, and that was like the last sort of major hurdle, because I already knew that we didn't have to go near Boston, right? We could bypass Boston entirely. And so I knew that New York City was the last major hurdle. So we get past New York City, and then we're only halfway there, right? New York City's the halfway point. So at that point, we've been driving for, 5 or 6 hours, and we're only halfway there. So we pushed it a little bit further. We made it to New Haven, Connecticut, the first day. So we got a hotel in New Haven. It was not the greatest hotel, but it was short notice and it was fine. So we get a hotel, we sleep, and then we get back on the road on Sunday morning, and we drove the rest of the way. And of course, once you're past New York City, like, there's not a lot of other major cities. Like, even the big cities up there aren't that big, unless of course you're talking about Boston, which, like I said, we weren't going near. So even like the big cities like Hartford or Springfield, like none of them were that big. So it was pretty smooth sailing the second day, and we got into the town where Wesley is now living by like 11 or noon or something, right? So it was a pretty easy second day. We got lunch, then we went to his place and kind of got him all settled. But yeah, then we spent Saturday sort of getting him settled. We had to like run to the store, of course, and get a whole bunch of stuff like that. And then I spent Monday up there as well. Again, a lot of just like getting him settled, like going to different stores and getting the things that he needed, because we could only bring what would fit in the back of the car. And so like we picked up an IKEA mattress before we went up there. We picked up a couple of like furniture pieces, and then everything else we were like, well, we'll get up there. So that we were doing that. So we did that all day Monday, and then Tuesday I had to fly back to Richmond because I had to work, right? Like, I could take Monday and Tuesday off, but I couldn't really afford to take much more time off. So I flew out of, there's like a little regional airport in the town where he's living, but like that was really not a good option. So there's a slightly larger regional airport, the Manchester airport, about an hour and 20 minutes away. So my flight was out of there, so Wesley had to drive me there. And not gonna lie, it was really beautiful. Like, it was maybe 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning when we were driving there, and it was all foggy, and we're in, of course you're kind of in the mountains there, so like there's these rolling hills covered in trees that are starting to change colors, and it was just like the most beautiful thing. And so Wesley drove me to the airport, and then I got on my plane and flew back home. One really annoying thing at the airport, though, was that, so I have pre-check, right? Like, I have the TSA pre-check thing, and it works really great. So, like, I get there, and, I get my boarding passes printed off, and normally it says, like, pre-check somewhere on there. This time it didn't, but I was like, well, maybe I'm just not seeing it, right? Like, it must be fine, because I know that I put my known traveler number in when I booked my tickets. So I get up, I go through the pre-check line, I get up to the front, the guy's like, you don't have pre-check. I'm like, yes, I do. And, like, I had my number ready just in case. He's like, well, you can't go through this line. And, like, I get it, right? Like, I'm not, like, arguing with, like, TSA security, right? Like, I get it. They can't make exceptions. So the bummer was that then I had to, like, get back into the regular line like a peasant. I was so upset because it's like, I've paid for pre-check, so I don't have to do this. And so I guess the lesson that I took for that, and I don't know, maybe it was a fluke thing, but normally I book my airline tickets through the airlines themselves. This time I booked it through Orbitz. And it's the first time I've booked through Orbitz since I've had pre-check. And so I guess the lesson that I'm taking from that is don't book through Orbitz and expect that your pre-check goes on your tickets, right? Like, you have to double check with the airlines. So that was really annoying. But otherwise, like, the flights back were a pretty smooth thing. And of course I got back on Tuesday afternoon and spent most of the evening very sad, crying my eyes out because, of course, now I'm back in my apartment all by myself. Talked to my mom on the phone and it was fine. But yeah, then I was back to work on Wednesday, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I was so busy at work from missing Monday and Tuesday that I barely had time to think about it. So then I wasn't really sad again until this weekend. Yesterday I was taking apart some furniture because, we had a love seat here that was taking up a lot of the living room. And so I was getting rid of that and replacing it with just like a chair because, of course, if it's just me, I don't need a big love seat. So I was taking apart the love seat, and of course I was like really sad because I was like, oh, but this is a piece of furniture we bought when we first got here and now it's gone, just being a crybaby about it. But otherwise I've been mostly okay. Of course it sucks, and like I can tell myself all I want that, like, this is the smart choice, right? Like, it would be, I think I've mentioned this, but like he doesn't know how long he's going to be up there. He might only be up there for like a year or two, in which case it's really stupid for me to leave a good job that pays me a decent amount of money and, all of that, to move up there where I may not be able to find a job right away. Like, it may take me, again, a long time to find a job, and it's, expensive to live up there and all of that, right? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense until we have more certainty about what's going on. But like, it still sucks, right? Like, it still sucks. And so I'm trying to use the time to just sort of like become a better version of myself. Which, we'll see how that goes, but I think it'll be good because for one thing, I think it's important for people to spend time by themselves, right? Like, I think sometimes you can become too dependent or too comfortable when you're living with someone, and I think it's good to spend time on your own and by yourself and learning to depend on yourself. And like, this is not the first time I've lived alone. I lived alone most of the time I was in grad school, and so I'm also trying to take lessons that I learned while I was living alone in grad school and apply them to what I'm doing now, right? So like, one of the things I remember about when I was in grad school was that, like, what really sucks when you live by yourself is you have to do everything, right? Like, all the chores have to get done by you, which is really rough when you're also, working full-time or going to school full-time, whatever. It's like you've spent all day working and then you come home and there's no one else to help, right? You have to do everything by yourself. And so I'm trying to really sort of like prepare and plan for that right now. So like, yesterday I cooked literally all of my food for the week, right? Like, my breakfast is typically a piece of fruit and some yogurt, so that's pretty much zero prep. But then I cooked 10 meals for the week, or no, more than 10, 12 meals for the week, right? So I have all of my lunches and dinners for the week ready to go in the fridge. And that means that I don't have to cook when I come home from work. I don't have to worry about, like, what am I taking for lunch every day. Everything is already done. And that's sort of, past me looking out for future me and trying to avoid some of that whole, like, it's been a crazy day at work and now I have to cook dinner, So it's like, no, it's already done. So I'm trying to do that. I'm also trying to, I'm going to use this time to really like focus down on my finances. I know I talk about that a lot. For one thing, because I don't think like finances should be a taboo subject, but like it's like I'm not super bad with money. Like I always have enough money to pay the bills, and I have plenty of money in savings and all of that. But one of the goals that I really want is I want to get my student loans paid off by the time I'm 30. And I know I've talked about this before, but even with that, right? Like if I look at like the numbers, I look at like how much money is coming in and how much money should be going out based on, how much are my bills, how much extra am I paying on my loans, what does food cost, all of that. Like I should have an extra, I think I calculated like $500 a month that never seems to materialize. It's like I'm never left over with money at the end of the month. And so that's something that like I really want to work on sort of while it's just me, because when Wesley was here, of course I could kind of write it off as like, well, we go out to eat a lot, or, we wind up, I'm not gonna say I blamed it on him, but like it was easier to just kind of be like, well, yeah. Versus like when it's just me, it's like I can tell myself more easily like, no. Like this afternoon, I would really love to go get like a fancy coffee drink from like the coffee place that's down the street. And it's a little bit harder when Wesley's here and I'm like, what sounds really good? Coffee. And he's like, yes. Right? Like that's always harder. But when it's just me, I can be like, no, you're saving money. You need to save money. Make yourself coffee in the kitchen, So I'm hoping that maybe by doing that, I will be able to sort of figure out like where all of my money's going a little bit better. Which is something I really need to do because, of course now I have to like have money for traveling to go see Wesley, right? I'm never going to make that drive again, especially because I don't have a car here anymore. Which means I have to fly up there. And I actually just booked plane tickets yesterday to go up there again in October. And it was like $400, right? Like, I know that flying is just expensive, right? This is something that I've just come to accept, that flying is expensive. But still, like, that's $400 that has to come from somewhere. And I'm hoping that if I can really keep a good lock on my finances, it's not $400 that has to come out of savings or anything, like, right? Like I can both hit the financial goals and I can find where that missing money is going and use that for traveling. So that's sort of like one of the big goals that I have while he's gone, is that I really want to get better with my finances. And I hope that will like lead to a lot of other things, right? Like if I'm better with my finances, then that is probably meaning that I'm also eating more meals at home, which means I'm cooking more for myself, which means I'm eating healthier because, just eating at home is just in general healthier than going out to eat, which also means that I'm using my time better because, I'm cooking at home versus spending a bunch of time going, right? So I'm hoping that the finances maybe is like the linchpin for making all of these other changes that I need to make. Referencing back to that, I talked about this book a couple weeks ago, The Power of Habit by, I think, Charles Duhigg. He talks in there about keystone habits, right? That like sometimes there's this one thing that you need to change and then everything else sort of falls into place once you've changed that thing. And that for some people, it can be as simple as like, okay, I'm going to start exercising. And then based on the fact that they start exercising, they also start eating healthier because they're feeling better, and they start going to bed at a better time, and they are more productive at work, right? But the keystone habit was exercising. So I'm hoping for me the keystone habit will be dealing with my finances and stopping sort of I call it financial snacking is what I call it, right? The little bits of money that just seem to like disappear. It's like snacks, right? Like it's not a full meal. It's not really what you're supposed to be doing. You just kind of do it without thinking, right? I'm hoping that if I stop the financial snacking, that I will just in general improve all these other things. And hopefully if I just focus on that kind of stuff, it will make me less sad that Wesley's not here, but we'll see. I feel like as long as I keep pretty busy, I'm doing okay. But hopefully the next time I go up there, I can vlog it a little bit because it really is nice up there and beautiful. I just wasn't vlogging it this last time because we were busy and it wasn't really that interesting. Like it was a lot of just like, oh my gosh, now we have to run back to the store to pick up this thing. And now we have, so it was kind of crazy. But hopefully next time I go up there, I can vlog it. But I think that's going to be it for me because I don't want this to get too long. Yeah, so that's that. If you listened to all of that, thank you very much for listening to me, rant like a crazy person and, be a little bit sad. But, yeah, otherwise, I guess I will see you guys next week. And, yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.